Hey everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and the bins that I want to check in on today, there are a couple bins that are, I guess, my oldest active bins, if you will. They're now 343 and 310 days of age, and as of 10 days ago, they're really not composting anymore. I gave them their last feeding, and now they're sort of in the stage that I refer to as foraging. Giving the worms a chance just to break down whatever remains in the bin. And like last week, they were given a bunch of Brussels sprout leaves, a cucumber, and there was a whole bunch of leftover cardboard. The previous feeding consisted of some cardboard tubes stuffed with pumpkin, and we found some leftovers that last time too, so I'm not quite sure what to expect, but I wanted to see what I could do in terms of, getting those things geared up for the migration of the worms out of their castings, harvesting the castings, and getting the worms hauled out and busy working elsewhere. From what I remember, one of the bins, at least, the younger, was very damp. There was also some leftover socks in there. Socks that I believe they've pretty much nibbled all the cotton out of already. The only stuff remaining is like the springy elastic stuff. So they're the bins that you see right here behind me. So I'm going to get them up on the bench and just see how the foraging process is coming along and see what we could do to help them make it to the finish line. All right, I'm going to put a glove on and we're going to get to work. So now this is the older of the two bins. The one where I felt like the moisture level was pretty good. Didn't seem like it was too overly damp. Now, let's get this little wormy back into the bin. So for that reason, I left most of it covered, allowing this to continue to get drier and drier over time. I believe even last time we were examining the far end of the bin, opposite of where the feedings have been getting applied. And we verified, at least last time already, that there were pretty much no worms hanging out in the stuff. And that seems to be the case here as well. No reason to think that there'd be worms hanging out in it, because it is kind of dry. But it is this dry stuff on the far end, opposite of where the feedings have been getting applied, that I thought might help us, perhaps in the other bin, if we were to blend it in with the stuff that seemed like it might have been a little bit more damp than we want it to be. Wow, look at that. This used to be a coffee filter, perhaps this big in size, but it seems like the worms have been busy working on it, nibbling it down. And you would think with those cardboard tubes down there and the yummy, Brussels sprouts and cucumber, they wouldn't have much interest in something like that, but I guess they like it. They're nibbling on it. So I'm already bumping into worms over here. And you'll remember that the plastic covering did come out to about here. So I'm wondering if we might benefit from kind of almost causing the worms to make their way further over to the edge that's been getting fed regularly. These were set up as sort of continuous flow configurations, which means feed here, allow this end to be with no food, perhaps even dry, and then you can even go so far as to start scooping castings out of this opposite end. Although we never really did that, but that would be one possible way to manage a bin like this. But I thought that, especially in the other bin, where things were seeming very damp over in the feeding area, we thought that maybe we could take some of this drier stuff and combine it with the more damp stuff. So I guess my other motivation for wanting to check back in here after 10 days was the fact that that juicy cucumber we gave them, stuffed into that one cardboard tube that was still kind of intact. I was just curious to see if we'd find any leftovers of that. Typically, cucumber is the sort of thing that you really wouldn't expect to see many leftovers of, but even last time we found leftovers of pumpkin. There it had been 11 days in between check-ins. Here it's been 10 days. I don't know, it's been a little bit chilly lately, and that might contribute to somewhat slower worm composting activity, because we're in my basement where there's no heat running. So, okay, here. We've got a couple novelty items in this system. This is the stem of a pumpkin, or what's left of it, after many, many months. This is not a pumpkin from this year's Halloween. It's a pumpkin from last year's Halloween. And then we had leftovers of the, leftovers of the cardboard. Oh yeah, another novelty item, a cork. A couple unusual little objects. So the cardboard tubes, I tell you, if they were this interested in the coffee filter, perhaps the cardboard tubes were all eaten. Oh, maybe not. Here's a piece of one of them. I wonder how much of it we're gonna bump into. There's a lot of worms down here. Here's another little piece. I was even wondering if maybe if I were to place some of these leftover cardboard bits out onto the surface right beneath the plastic where the moisture is recirculating, I wondered if they might get more heavily broken down by being on the surface. Sort of like what we saw with that coffee filter. So that was one idea that I had. I'll tell you, I don't see any signs of cucumber. I think this might have been the tube that the cucumber had been in. I mean, no cucumber seeds, no cucumber skin. A little bit more cardboard, I believe, or paper of some sort. Alright, pretty busy over here on this side. Kind of makes sense since we're making the opposite end of the bin almost inhospitable for them to want to be in. Very nice. There's really not much left for these little guys to do. And if we do want to, you know, harvest these castings at some point, for the stuff to be a little bit more dry would be beneficial. So I think I'm going to follow through with that thought that I had of taking some of this drier stuff. We did this last time too. However, I think we did it in the other bin, in the more damp bin, but I think that there's probably an advantage to sort of injecting a little bit of dryness into this somewhat damp material. I mean, it's not such dryness that it's going to cause discomfort to the worms, I don't think. But perhaps it'll help us drive more quickly towards the point where I feel like the material is dry enough, crumbly enough that I can do a harvest of the castings. I've thought about maybe doing the light harvesting approach. I mean, the fact that we're already in this sort of wedge pattern or continuous flow pattern, it does almost seem like it would lend itself to a migration approach to getting the worms to exit the material that they're inhabiting. And that would just consist of me setting up yet another fresh environment just beyond the contents of the bin to try to lure them out of their finished castings. And, you know, finished castings don't have a whole lot of food left in them. And as it gets drier and drier, that as well would contribute to being a reason that the worms might not want to stay. So I don't think we're going to do that quite yet. I'd still like to allow for a little bit more time for foraging because we do have these leftovers here. So we'll, I think we'll do what I had thought there, which would be to place the leftovers that we encountered right up onto the top surface beneath the plastic where the moisture is recirculating, and perhaps that'll really help those leftovers get gobbled up more so than being down within the bed. I don't know. Not sure. Does anyone agree or disagree with that concept or idea? I don't know. Just an idea. I see no harm in giving it a try. The material looks really good. I did actually expect to find a lot more leftovers as far as the cardboard tubes, but it is kind of nice to see what a nice job they've done gobbling up these cardboard tubes. Here's a piece of corn cob, and at this point, as much as I like to just give corn cobs just their own time, whatever time it takes for them to break down on their own, I figured let's break these up a little bit. Perhaps that too will help with the process of them gobbling it up. And I got a feeling that these novelty items, the pumpkin stem and the cork, they're definitely going to end up going with the worms to their new home. But everything else, these bits of cardboard, these chunks of corn maybe even, I don't know, the corn might not go either. It would be kind of nice to see that they've gobbled up all the remaining bits of leftovers, or the majority of it, before we try to get them to exit the material. Alright, very nice. I think once again we're going to just, leave this end of the bin uncovered so that the worms tend to work their way over towards the edge of the bin where the feedings have been getting applied and where the majority of the moisture in the system is. And perhaps we can even reduce the size of the covered area a bit now too, and let more of it dry. Further driving them out of this end over that way, and then maybe sometime soon we'll be able to harvest their castings and get them busy elsewhere. I don't know, I'm curious to see how this works. Seems like we're not far. Definitely seems like we're not far from being able to harvest these castings and get these little guys out of here. Alright, let's get the other bin. Alright, so now here, I was definitely interested in, if possible, extracting these pieces of, yeah, I think this should be no problem, these pieces of socks. I believe for some time now these socks have been completely devoid of any edible materials anymore. I believe any cotton content that there was is long gone at this point. It's like this part of the sock is the lower part that goes around your foot, and then this is the very top, the part that goes around your thigh. And that middle section must have been mainly cotton, because that stuff got completely eaten. But this stuff, I guess, has more of that springy elastic stuff that the worms just weren't able to eat. And the reason I left this stuff out on the surface was to give it time to dry, so that all the worms would gradually move out of this stuff. So we could pull it out, and at this point I believe the cotton can be extracted. Well, it's not cotton anymore, the socks. I just figured if I can leave the castings in the container, let's do that. Okay. There was other cotton objects placed in here besides the socks. There was a piece of beach towel, and the beach towel must have been entirely cotton because they completely ate that, and they did so quite quickly. So here too, I believe that this piece of coffee filter was pretty much brand new. This edge of it really looks like it's been nibbled, the part that was still under plastic. We knew that this part of it not being covered, the plastic was only covering a portion of the bin. This was left to air out, and this was as well. So it does seem like the part of the coffee filter that was left, just like the cotton, to be exposed to the air did not get really very heavily worked at all. So now once again, I'm thinking if we can make use of some of this drier stuff over on this edge, perhaps blending it in a little bit with the more damp stuff on the other side, then we can sort of help this thing get a little bit closer to the point where we might be able to get these castings harvested, get the worms out of here. Yeah, I think we already saw the same thing last time. We checked through here, we didn't really see any worms anymore. Although this stuff doesn't seem quite as dry as we saw on the unfed end in the other bin. Over here, however, we had so much moisture, it really made me wonder, when we could possibly harvest this material, especially if it's quite this damp. It's, I don't know, it's not going to be very easy. Especially after putting a cucumber in here. I imagine the cucumber would also contribute to the moisture content in here. So I thought that perhaps once again we can just start combining some of this slightly drier castings material with the more damp stuff might help things become a little bit more manageable and help us get to our objectives a little bit more quickly. And I got a feeling we're going to find a similar situation down here. Oy, oy, oy. Look at that. I can't believe this piece of cardboard tube almost looks like it's still one piece. I think that's what we've always found in this bin, is we always get caught off guard, and I think I even said the same thing last time. Get caught off guard with just how many worms live in this system, because there are quite a number of them. Which makes me curious as to why a piece of cardboard like this wouldn't be eaten yet. This little jumble of worms, they couldn't seem to burrow down into the material to get out of the bright lights. Yeah, look at all these little guys. Holy camole. So I think we'll do the same here. I think we'll take these cardboard bits, but you know what, let's see what happened inside this one that had the cucumber in it. Is there any chance that there'd be any leftover cucumber? It seems very unlikely. Alright, so it does seem like we've got just about an equal amount of leftover cardboard here as we saw in the other one. Although somehow this bin seems to me almost like it's a little bit more heavily populated than the other one. I'm not sure if you would agree or not, but that just seems to be the case, at least to my eye. I'm going to take a little bit more of this somewhat drier material and keep blending it in over here, I think. This is going to hopefully get us to the point where we can end up with some less muddy material over here on this end. And bring the whole contents of the system into a more manageable state so we can consider getting the worms out of here. I don't know, I'm not sure, light migration or light separation, which is really just, you know, having the bright lights on, allowing the worms to burrow down into the material and then skimming their castings off the top. That's the sort of thing that can be done in about an hour's time. Versus migration, which, like I mentioned earlier, is just setting up an environment for them on the edge of the bin that they can gradually move into, exiting their finished compost, finished castings. Not sure which route I want to take. It does almost seem like migrating them would be pretty easy, since the majority of them are already out on this edge anyway, and that this end has pretty much been evacuated because it's been left more or less dry for quite some time now. Although we did sort of blend things together quite a bit there. Alright, let's see what we can do about leveling stuff off here a little bit, and then we'll drape out these leftover bits on the top surface again like we did in the other bin. And we've definitely moved a lot of worms over onto the side that's more dry at this point. I think they'll return to the more damp side. Although now that we've combined some of the material, perhaps it's not quite as imbalanced anymore as it was before. But either way, I'm going to start bringing all these things over to this side. Sort of laying it out, hopefully making it easy for the worms to get at. I mean, these are surface feeding worms, right? And that's the reason I suppose I'm thinking that maybe by putting the stuff that I want them focusing their attention on the surface, perhaps that will help us see this stuff done away with a little bit more quickly. I don't know. We'll see. And what's this? some other sort of piece of fabric, perhaps. All right. And I even thought about maybe perhaps even leaving more of this system exposed to the air so that it can further dry even more than the other bin, because the other bin actually looks like it's pretty close. Oh yeah, we've still got this that we want them working on too, right? We'll put that right there. And, well, you know, I don't know. I'm in no rush, I guess. We'll see what happens here. I would like to reduce the size of the covering. Right now it was about half. What if we get it closer to a third? Well, that's maybe not quite a third. But I also like the idea of leaving a little bit of air to hit some of this material out on this edge too. And let this stuff really dry, and the worms that are over there, they'll probably head over to where the more, you know, moist stuff is. And I don't know. This was just our little check-in with our technically oldest active bins. Now foraging for 10 days. And perhaps, I don't know, maybe at the next check-in we can set up a migration or decide that we want to migrate them with the light or whatever. But I'm up in the air with that. We'll have to decide later. Alright everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always very much appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's really appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.